So last week I did a quick emergency fiqh session, right? So I want to do one more today. And both of these are in response to concerns I have because of things that, happen in the community. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was this bad. I need to address this, right? So last week it was this issue of tahara, all right? So it was to do with worship and ensuring that our worship is safeguarded from really, really basic mistakes that have big repercussions, okay? So here it's a social issue. It's a family issue. Again, small mistake, small piece of ignorance, not knowing the rules results in massive repercussions, right? And that's the issue of talaq. And I think I have discussed this once before, but I feel like it needs to happen again because recently I've had cases where, it seems to be happening again and people just don't seem to be aware of this basic reality. So recently somebody came up to me and after having been told about the correct method of talaq, of divorcing in Islamic law, came up to me and said, I thought divorce in Islam was always 3. Like if you wanted to divorce your wife, you had to divorce 3 times otherwise, and that's the only valid way in which divorce can happen. Now that is a really, really serious and dangerous misunderstanding. All right, so I'm going to quickly run through it. Okay. In Islam, first and foremost, we do our best to make marriage work. All right, and for it to work, what is required is people's commitment to bringing the best version of themselves to the marriage, i.e., people's commitment to developing their character. Right, and I believe this is the reason why the Prophet ﷺ referred to marriage as half of faith. The reason why it is half of Iman is because half of Iman is character. Half of Iman is character, it's personality, it's compassion, it's love, it's adorning in ourselves characteristics that make us beautiful people inside and out, and removing and suppressing within ourselves, fighting back against negative attributes like jealousy and hatred and rancor and things like that basically bring the worst out of us, both in terms of action and even if we are diplomatic or have a diplomatic and tolerable demeanor, sometimes the hatred that exists inside of us makes for a really, really dark person inside, and often that comes out away from the public eye. It comes out away from the public eye. So then the person becomes the worst version of himself. He's the best version of himself because he has to be in public, at work, in the masjid, in community affairs and so on. But then at home, he's the worst version of himself, right? So he believes in mercy and compassion and forgiveness and all of these other great things, but he can't bring himself to institute and bring out those qualities in his own marriage. So he isn't as forgiving when it comes to his wife, or she isn't as forgiving when it comes to her husband, or when it comes to their children, and so on and so forth. Anyway, the Prophet ﷺ said about divorce, he said, أبغض الحلال إلى الله الطلاق. The most hated halal thing in the eyes of, just listen to the wording carefully. The most hated halal thing in the eyes of Allah is talaq, is divorce. The most hated halal thing in the eyes of Allah is divorce, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't encourage us to marry. The Prophet didn't say that marriage is his sunnah, right, for it to end in talaq, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like it, but he allows it because it's sometimes necessary. So it should never be taken as this, just, like, it's no big deal. I'll marry somebody, if it doesn't work, I'll divorce them. That's really not the right attitude. Okay, when it doesn't work and it becomes necessary, then the valid talaq is done in, there's many ways, but I'll summarize in 2 ways. All right? One is that a person gives talaq. I'll mention 3 actually. The third one is quite important. So one is that a person, so in Islam, talaq is one of those issues in Islamic law that kind of make it that bring right to the forefront of our minds the importance of controlling our tongues. Spiritually, in the chapter of improving our character, etc., we read hadiths about anybody who can guarantee that they will safeguard their tongue and they will safeguard their chastity, then I will guarantee for them paradise. The Prophet ﷺ has said things like that, right? So we think of that as just a matter of virtue. But this virtue, when it comes to divorce, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has hardwired it into law by making it so that a mere pronouncement of divorce executes it. No witness is necessary between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You've executed a divorce. No witness is necessary, no court process is necessary. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it one of the biggest tests of men, because He gave them the right to talaq. He gave them the right to basically pronounce talaq. And men, pretty much, it's like a man's character, chivalry, manhood, his ability to forbear and to hold back and to withhold, all of that is brought to the test, right? If you now throw ignorance into that and people not knowing the rule, you've got a serious recipe for disaster. So in talaq, first of all, pronouncement is enough, right? Secondly, there's 3 ways in which it can be done. 1, you pronounce once. You pronounce once and that's it, right? 3 months of waiting, i.e. 3 menstrual cycles of the wife, 3 months of waiting, and then talaq is executed. However, when one talaq is given, when one pronouncement is made, it is revocable, it is raj'i, meaning it can automatically get revoked if the couple engage in any intimacy, right? So if people are serious about going their separate ways, then they've got to engage, they've got to be really, really disciplined in those 3 months, because the norm for those 3 months is for the wife to remain in the marital home, right? For them to both live in the marital home together. If a person, this is the second method. If a person thinks, do you know what? We don't want any possibility of revocation, then they should execute what I call a separating talaq, what we call a talaq ba'in. And this is where you basically make that one pronouncement, but you just simply say with the intention of separation. That is one talaq, I pronounce one talaq, but a separating one. That's it, that's all it takes, right? So that's the second method. And the third method is this one talaq and ending it is called talaq ahsan, the most beautiful and best form of talaq, right? The second one is called talaq sunnah, right? And this is where 2 people are committed to permanently kind of ending things between them. It hasn't worked out, but they don't do it instantaneously. One talaq is pronounced in one period of cleanliness. A month later, in the next period of cleanliness, a second talaq is pronounced, and a month later, a third talaq is pronounced, right? With these month-long separations. This is called talaq sunnah. And finally, what has now for some reason become popular in society of giving 3 talaqs at once. Pronouncing multiple talaqs at once. Talaq, talaq, talaq. I give you talaq 100 times. Take 100 or whatever, these kind of angry pronouncements. And it's for some reason become common knowledge in society that that's how you have to do it. That's how you have to do it. This in Sharia is called talaq bid'i. Talaq bid'i. The bid'ah talaq. And it is haram. It is haram. To do it is a major sin. However, if you do it, it will be executed. And according to the majority of scholars, it becomes a permanent divorce. Except one view from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, who says that 3 talaqs equal 1. Which one you follow depends on who you go to for your answer, right? Which mufti you go to for advice, which imam you go to for advice. But just for all, especially men, because you have the power of talaq, right? Just one thing. 2 things, remember 2 things. 1, there's no such thing as 3 talaqs in one go. No such thing. It is sinful to do it. Number 1. Number 2, never ever use the vocabulary of talaq in anger. Never. It must never be on your tongue. You're angry, find some other way, right? Talk it through, or I don't know, swear some profanity if you must, right? But not talaq, for goodness sake, because it has serious consequences. Families will get torn apart, and although I never really meant it like that. Well, this is the one scenario in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enshrined in law the principle of what you say with your tongue matters. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.